This conference will now be recorded.
All right, looks like all of our technology is ready. So welcome to the Bellevue City Council meeting. It is Tuesday, May 19th, 2020 at 6 p.m. We're conducting another virtual meeting. Pursuant to the Governor's Executive Order number 20-003 and due to the corona concerns related to the coronavirus, this City Council meeting will be conducted virtually. No member of the City Council is attending in person, with the exception of the mayor. All other City Council members are appearing virtually, and this meeting is closed to the physical attendance of the public. The public can participate via Facebook Live, GoToMeeting, or by submitting concerns or questions to info.bellevue.net. I would ask that all public attending via GoToMeeting, please mute your microphones. Members of the public will only be allowed to speak during public hearings once opened up to the public, and we'll call on members of the public one at a time to speak. The agenda can be found on our city website at bellevue.net under the Clerks tab. We will skip the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation for obvious reasons. And Susan, would you call the meeting to order with roll call?
Mr. Stinson?
Here.
Mr. Cook?
Here.
Mr. Shannon?
Here.
Mr. Preister?
Here.
Mr. Burns?
Here.
And Ms. Welch?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. This meeting will be conducted in accordance with the Nebraska Open Meetings Act. A copy of that act is posted in the entry to the council chambers and can also be found online under Nebraska Revised Statutes 84-1407 through 84-1414, as well as the Governor's Executive Order 20-03. Number 5, approval of agenda. Consent agenda claims advisory committee reports. We'll start with 5A, approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
I will second.
Motion by Shannon, seconded by Preister to approve the agenda. Any questions? Please vote.
Mr. Stinson?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mr. Shannon?
Yes.
Mr. Preister?
Yes.
Mr. Burns?
Yes.
And Ms. Welch?
Yes.
Thank you. Item 5B, approval of the consent agenda. Items marked with an asterisk are approved where this item is unless otherwise removed. Councilman Cook?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to remove item 16B and put it to
Okay,
consent agenda, or I'm sorry, put it on the regular agenda.
Okay, item 16B is removed from the consent agenda. Any others? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with item 16B being moved to the agenda? Councilman Cook?
Make a motion, we approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Consent
Motion
agenda.
by Cook. Motion by Cook, seconded by Burns to accept the consent agenda as amended. Please vote.
Mr. Stinson?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mr. Shannon?
Yes.
Mr. Preister?
Yes.
Mr. Burns?
Yes.
And Ms. Welch?
Yes.
All voting yes, motion passes.
Thank you. Item 7, no special presentations this evening. Item 9, approved citizen communication. 9A, request to address council regarding impacts of COVID-19 on city's budget. Mr. Jim Modry, 1207 Rebecca Court. So if you're there, Jim, go ahead and
All
you
right.
have the floor
Thank you,
on my
Mayor.
screen.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council members. Appreciate this opportunity to address you. I sent some questions in regarding kind of where the city's budget stands and what the impacts of COVID-19 may be on our budget. Not necessarily so much for this year's budget, but for the upcoming next year's budget, which you will start looking at and putting together here in the next few months. So, with that, I had questions, given how COVID-19 has impacted the economy and impacted citizens out there with hitting them pretty hard financially. I wanted to get thoughts and start the discussion on next year's budget, hopefully with no tax increases, and hopefully you could work with the collective bargaining units to maybe roll back some of the automatic annual increases they get in salary, those kind of things to try and tighten where we can. So just wanted to start that discussion and get some thoughts on what could be considered and what could be done. Particularly, since, as I said, the citizens are being hit hard financially and can't really take much of a further burden. Meanwhile, all of you, by a state statute, are getting paid as normal, as are the city employees, and they get pretty good benefits as well. So just want to put that out there and have any discussion.
Jim, if I replied to your questions regarding our status this year, which I hope kind of shed some light on the impact COVID has had on the city. And when you look at our general fund and the items that feed into that, we've seen limited impact. Of course, our property tax, our occupation tax is on a general trajectory to be actually better than what we anticipated. Sales tax for March and April are trending ahead. Had a meeting with the Papillion this morning. They too are trending ahead. We think we have online sales tax that is probably setting a higher marker than anticipated, as well as some of the things we thought, like in the restaurant industry or some of our retail, they've weathered it quite well. And as we roll out, we think that, well, we're projecting for the worst case. I think we shared that we'd take a $700,000 deficit on our sales tax by year end. Nothing in our trend is truly pointing towards that. So as an optimist, don't think we're going to hit that, but we are planning to say if that does happen, here's where we're at. So as some of the things we stated in there from a revenue standpoint, things that we already count on, we're not similar to our neighbor to the north, which is very reliant on events. Omaha looks at the College World Series, the Berkshire Hathaway. They're forecasting some pretty drastic cuts coming their way. We're not relying on that. Neither is our neighbor. Papillion is kind of the same. We're just not tied to big events. Our hotel taxes are down, but that's generally because travel's down. I think that'll slowly start to creep back up, but I think we're in a pretty good place with our sales tax to replace that. So as we move forward from the expense side, one of our concerns are what are COVID-related expenses. To date, we've probably seen about 100,000 in expenses that are COVID-related. But of those 100,000, we have some pathways to get state funding back on it, as well as in the county. So we are seeking that reimbursement. I don't think that, I don't have a solid answer as to what that share will be, but we're feeling pretty confident there will be some additional dollars there for us. CDBG put another $200,000 in the bucket for COVID related. Our fire department saw a $30,000 grant come in. I think our police department has also applied for a grant. So they, when we get into some of the PPE, what does that do to offset some of their costs? So then you roll to the business sector, what kind of impact are our businesses having? And that's probably a bigger concern. Where do they go in the future here? And we're kind of in progress in talking to a lot of our businesses in coordination with our chamber as to what we see on the horizon. So far, there is nothing here locally that we are anticipating as a closure. So they're slowly ramping back up. I think as we see some of the restrictions come off here at the end of this month going into June, it'll shed some different lights on us as how we end out the year here. But then going into next year, unless something is truly drastic here, we're not seeing that. So we have some ideas as to maybe to deploy some significant cuts if we had to. I'm not seeing like we'd have to see what Omaha's going to do. Omaha will probably go through some pretty high furloughs at some given point. I don't think we're going to get there. We looked at that early on if we had to choose that. I don't see anything that made us adapt that trend. So I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything to that, but we're pretty positive as to where we're at right now.
When do
Mr.
we see
Muggs?
bars opening?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Councilman Shan.
When do we see bars opening? So we get that revenue back?
Come the end of the month here, so the June 1st will be kind of the litmus test as to what changes there. And what we're anticipating is what's going to be the next group. So like with events, or if you have gatherings, a wedding, maybe so many people could attend that wedding, but maybe not a reception. So maybe in the next 30 days, Pat, but it may be a different world than what we see right now as to what can attend in that bar.
Okay, and just from an accountant's point of view, our restaurants were well supported in the first 2 months of this, and they actually saw an uptick in revenues across the board. That is not going to be true for May. Revenues are way down in our restaurants. So you will see that hit in sales tax in June.
That's interesting because that's not the feedback we're getting either. So we're seeing that while their dine-in has not, so they've reduced restrictions on dine-in. And I'd say they were supposed to only be at half capacity, and they're not hitting that. But their takeout is still exceeding anything that's above beyond their expectations. So takeout is still at a very high level. And that's specific to the Bellevue market. So people are more inclined to support local. If you're a specialty restaurant in the old market, that we're seeing them get dinged very heavily because they don't have the supporting community around them. Bellevue so far hasn't seen that. Feedback we're getting from restaurant owners that because they don't have the expense associated with their dining room being full tilt. So they're still pushing a heavy takeout system, which at some point that'll transition. So we just got to watch that and see how that goes.
Bree, did you have something to add?
I was just going to add that just so everybody knows that we will just continue to follow the directed health measures that are issued by the state health department and our local health department, SART-BCAS. So a lot of that on timing of restaurants will open and other matters are really kind of left up to those health departments, and we will follow those orders.
Councilwoman Welch?
So Jim, are we seeing any tick up with like permits and inspections with people being home and now they're working on more of the projects at home and having more contractors come in? Are we seeing any rise in that at all?
Home improvements are, they're trending up at the same, if not greater level. Permits for new homes, business development, that has not slowed down at all, Kathy. So we're not seeing anything that's derailing, and that may only grow more for us here in the future, but it goes back to the sales tax conversation. Something like Menards, a lot of the home improvement projects, they absolutely were blowing the doors off. And then if you walk into a Walmart or anybody that's a retail outlet that's open, you can't find a bicycle, you can't find a trampoline, you can't find a outdoor small pool. They are buying everything that's related to home activities. So that's another side that's probably pushing the trend line above. But online is going to be the thing that we really watch because they are well above and beyond what people are sitting at home ordering. So to answer your question, we're not seeing any slowdown on P&I. Mark, you're in there more than I am. So.
No, I really don't have anything to add. They're busy. They haven't seen anything slow down at all over there.
Well, and I just know, and Rusty probably is the same way, that, we just haven't seen any turn down in residential real estate as well. And that contributes to other industries as well, also helps out with the sales tax. So I appreciate your answer. Thank you.
There are plenty of people that are getting hurt. And Jim, Mr. Modry, your words are well received. And I think to answer your question, the city is not looking at increasing any taxes or not looking at adding any sales taxes. So, we're cognizant of that, and we'll definitely pay attention to it.
I understand. Thank you so much. It's good to hear that we haven't been hit real hard yet. But I think it's important that we really keep a close eye on developments as we go along here, because things can shift or change pretty rapidly with this thing. So thank you.
Yep. All right. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right. We'll move on to number 10, liquor licenses. We have none. Number 11, ordinances for adoption, third reading. We have none. Item 12, ordinances for public hearing, second reading. 12A is ordinance number 3995. Mr. Risto, would you read that ordinance, please?
Yes. Request to rezone tax lots 2A and 2B located in the northwest quarter of section 21, T14N, R13E from RS72 to RE for the purpose of facilitating the construction of a 50-foot by 60-foot barn structure. Applicant John and Alyssa Butner. General location 8405 South 36th Street. Case number Z2003-04. Submitted by our planning manager.
Okay, thank you. I will open ordinance number 3995 up for public hearing. Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak regarding ordinance number 3995? Please make yourself known. Take a moment here.
Nothing, no comments, Mayor.
Okay, no comments from our other social outlets, nothing on GoToMeeting, so I will close the public hearing on ordinance number 3995. If there's no other comments from our Councilwoman Welch.
Thank you, Mayor. Tammy, with regards to this, what I read is they were wanting to make their property to be similar to other properties. Is that what I'm understanding, the reason that they're wanting to build this size of outbuilding?
Correct. The applicants have approximately 9.5 acres of land. The residential estates zoning district will allow them to construct an outbuilding up to 3,000 square feet. We have had other applications similar to this in that area that have gone through City Council for approval for the same type of situation.
Okay, and do they have any specific use, or they're just wanting to bring their area up to the same as the other areas around there?
I believe they have horses, so that's part of the reason they want to build the outbuilding to help house those.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, the third reading for ordinance number 3995 will be June 2nd, 2020 at 6 p.m. Item 13, ordinances for introduction, first reading. Ordinance number 3996, amending the budget for fiscal year 2019, 2020, and authorize mayor to sign. Any questions at this time? Okay, the second reading on public hearing will be June 2nd, 2020 at 6 p.m. Item 13B, ordinance number 3997, revised compensation ordinance due to recent changes to positions in the city. Any comments at this time? Okay, seeing none, the second reading and public hearing will be June 2nd, 2020 at 6 p.m. Public hearing on matters other than ordinances. We have none this evening. Resolutions. 15A, resolution number 2020-21. Approve and authorize the mayor to sign resolution amending the master fee schedule to set solid waste collection, recycling, and yard waste fees per the new contract. Take a motion. Councilman Preister?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move to approve as just read.
I'll second that.
Motion by Preister, seconded by Welch. Any comments or questions regarding resolution number 2020-21? Seeing none, Susan, would you take the vote?
Mr. Stinson,
Yes.
Mr. Cook,
Yes.
Mr. Shannon,
Yes.
Mr. Preister,
Yes.
Mr. Burns,
Yes.
and Ms. Welch.
Yes.
All voted yes, motion carries.
Thank you. Item 15B, resolution 2020-22. Approve and authorize the mayor to sign bond resolution to preserve the city's flexibility in financing improvements for 2020 paving improvements. Do I have a motion? Councilman Burns?
Move to approve, hold on one second. Resolution number 2020-22.
Second.
Second.
Motion by Burns, seconded by Stenson. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, Susan, would you take the vote?
Mr. Stinson,
Yes.
Mr. Cook,
Yes.
Mr. Shannon,
Yes.
Mr. Preister,
Yes.
Mr. Burns,
Yes.
and Ms. Welch.
Yes.
All voted yes, motion carried.
Thank you. Takes us to current business, item 16. 16B, approve and authorize mayor to sign the amended Bellevue zoning development agreement with Main Street Properties to retain conditional BGM-OTO zoning to allow continued use of the parcel for business offices, to allow use of the parcel as a U-Haul operation for the rental of moving vans, trucks, trailers, and related equipment, and the sale of boxes and packing materials.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
my participation in this item will be as a private citizen. I am recusing myself as a council member.
Councilman Shannon's recused himself as a council member. Discussion, any discussion?
Point of,
Comments, motion? Councilman Preister.
Mayor, point of clarification. At this point, should we have something on the floor, so a motion and then discussion, and if we want to open it up for public comment, so citizens may comment, would that be appropriate at this time for such motion?
Yes.
Yes, that would be appropriate.
So do we have a motion? We'll open up for discussion if we get a motion. Second. Councilman Stenson?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second for the discussion, and then I would like to make another motion, Mayor.
Okay, so we have a motion by Stenson, second by Preister to approve. Councilman Preister, another motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I would like to make a motion to open this for any public comment, so anyone who wishes may have the opportunity to ask questions or testify.
So motion by Preister to open for public comment. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councilman Stinson to open for public comment. So we will open 16B up for public comment. Is there anybody in the audience? Let me
Mayor,
stop.
we need to vote on whether to open it up for public hearing first.
Oh, yeah, I guess we could do that properly.
Okay, and
Oh,
Mr. Shannon will abstain.
Any comments on that motion to open up for public hearing? Susan, would you take the vote?
Mr. Stinson,
Yes.
Mr. Cook,
Yes.
Mr. Shannon is abstaining. Mr. Preister,
Yes.
Mr. Burns,
Yes.
and Ms. Welch.
Yes.
5 voting yes, 1 abstention, motion carries.
All right, so the public hearing is open now for item 16B. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak? Mr. Pat Shannon.
Thank you. I am Pat Shannon, president of Main Street Properties. Main Street Properties office is at 2221 Main Street in Bellevue. We had requested that this item be presented on the agenda tonight, requesting cancellation of the zoning development agreement. We don't feel that there's ever been a valid reason for this to exist in the first place. This was just political harassment against me personally. They restricted 3 of my parking spots and threatened to take my zoning away if I used them. So this is tantamount to you going out buying a house and them telling you you can't use the driveway. So this has never made any sense. Nobody on this council has been party to this, and I don't think anybody on this council wants to be party to this, but this is just something that needs to go away. It's never made sense. That little U-Haul shop generates $14,000 in sales tax revenue for Bellevue, $2,000 in sales tax revenue off moving supplies and boxes, and another $4,000 in property tax. So that's $20,000 in tax generation off that little U-Haul. There's been no problems in the last 10 years since we've been doing U-Haul there. Right now, the 3 parking spots that are restricted are my largest parking spots, and we need to be able to bring in extra trucks because the base is coming to the end of their 60-day freeze on moving, and I need to have extra trucks in here to support the reservations we have coming up. And so basically you drive by and you see trucks on my lot. Those trucks are there based upon my schedule and how many reservations we have for people moving. We have 4 trucks that are always there for local moves, but the remainder of the trucks you see are there for one-way moves. And those trucks come and go constantly. I think I have 10 on the lot right now. One's going to Florida tomorrow, and one's going to Overland Park, Kansas tomorrow. So all these trucks just keep rotating constantly. The 3 restricted parking spots are in the middle of 3 lots that I own there. So it's not like we're blocking an intersection with trucks or anything else. I own 3 lots on the corner, and these 3 parking spots that are restricted right now are on the middle lot. So it doesn't accomplish anything. I don't know. That's pretty much all I have to say about it. I'll be available to answer questions if the council has any.
We are open for public hearing, and it looks like Mr. Mudry would like to speak.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Does anyone know the reasoning or why those parking spots were restricted originally, or why they are now?
Tammy, do you have the history on that?
Sure. Previously, there was a request by Mr. Shannon to be rezoned to the BGM. It went through Planning Commission, City Council. There were concerns at the time about extending the BGM zoning deeper into the residential neighborhood. I think going back and looking through the minutes, this was perhaps a way for City Council to create a compromise. just because there was concerns that there would be some disruption amongst the single-family residences. So thereas the contractual zoning agreement was adopted. But like I said, going through the minutes, I think this was just a restriction placed on the property to allow Mr. Shannon to have the zoning, but also just to keep the property from being disruptive to the surrounding residential districts and just kind of minimize the size of the parking area.
Have there been any complaints or disruption that has taken place from surrounding neighbors or anything?
I can't speak to where the complaints have come from over the years. I'm aware of 2 complaints that have come into code enforcement that have been addressed. Again, I don't keep track of where those complaints come from, and I don't know that code enforcement does that either.
Mr. Risto or Mr. Albert, do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. This was coming from code enforcement. So they did have a problem with this agreement in October of 12 with vehicles being parked on the north side of the building. That violation was then corrected in November. There was a second one. It came in September of 13, specific to the same type of complaint. It was unfounded. So I wouldn't take that into consideration. And then there was another valid one here more recently in April of 20, again with vehicles being parked on the north side, which is problematic with the agreement.
So if this is approved, does the owner still has the waiver, correct? Does anybody have an answer for that?
Yes, Mayor. If this is approved, he would have the agreement. It would only be temporarily modified through December 31st to allow the parking of the U-Hauls in those parking spaces due to the needs for COVID-19 and moving. But then beginning January 1, 2021, it would go back to the original agreement where no parking would be allowed on the north face of the building. Does that answer that question?
Yes, I guess there are restrictions. I mean, there are businesses down there. I know there's an auto place on the corner of Franklin and Mission that they would certainly like to have a little more freedom to park cars and such. So I know they're restricted, probably under similar type zoning. And we are putting a lot of the city's putting a little money, and I should say a lot of money in street improvements along with the project that's going along on Mission Avenue. That's a $10 to $12 million project that should be, where the city buildings are being demoed. So I know there's a lot of other businesses improving their facades and dressing the street up. I would, I think that's the wrong direction, opening that up for vehicles to be parked out on street side. Just my opinion, I guess, on that. Kind of, it's counterintuitive to what we're doing. Councilman Preiser.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make sure that Mr. Modry had his expressions and questions answered. Jim, were you done?
Yes. I just wanted to see what the extent of any complaints have been or that. And it sounds like there have been very few over the years, but some. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I may shed some additional light because I was and am the only one on the council who was here at the time that this actually passed. I had to refresh my memory. So thanks to Clerk Cluthy and Planner Palm, I got some information from the past records that did in fact refresh my memory. We did have the zoning request to rezone, and that was before the Planning Commission and the council. The Planning Commission recommended denial. the council was ready to deny, but wanted to at least compromise. So the compromise became the zoning development agreement in the ordinance 3682. That compromise, and I'll read a couple parts of it. In number 4, it says that there will be no parking or storage of U-Hauls and vans, trucks, or trailers on the portion of, and yeah, there is the section, no parking or storage of U-Haul vans, trucks, or trailers shall be permitted on the portion of the parcel north of the north face of the building currently situated on the parcel. That was put into it because we did hear from neighbors at the time, although there were petitions that Mr. Shannon and his attorney presented with many people in support. There were also those people who lived quite some distance from the area. They were taken into account, certainly, but there was concern in the neighborhood and the council wanted to help. So against the wishes of the planning commission, who saw this as spot zoning and said this would be an exception to what we normally do, and we choose not even to do a covenant or any kind of zoning development agreement. And they voted to not approve and then sent that to the council. The council then decided we would seek a compromise. And we did not seem to be big government infringing on somebody's rights. We were actually going against what the Planning Commission said and against our own zoning code, and still allowing this ordinance with this zoning development agreement to go forward. We felt we were giving more than the benefit of the doubt, and it was not a complete vote by all of the council. Councilwoman Sanyuk opposed it, and somewhat strenuously, and said that we should not be doing this kind of a precedent. And we did it. So we're at this juncture with an agreement and a unique situation. To my knowledge, it's still the only one in the city that we have. So it is unique. And at this point, I would ask that in the ordinance, we pull up number 5 in the zoning development agreement. That would be recital E. Okay. The passage of this ordinance is conditioned upon the approval of all parties to be attached agreement with respect to the use of the above described parcel of land. And that was passed. It was on final reading and passed by the council on September 10th of 2012. And the ordinance with the agreement was signed either before or immediately after that by all parties and was approved according to law and form. Now, I think we're in an awkward situation at this point because there is also a provision, since this agreement has been signed and agreed to by everyone, that is in number 6 of that agreement. And if that could be brought up, this is in regards to the violations of it. And if we look at that, in the event that the owner shall violate any of the provisions of this agreement, then after providing the owner with written notice of each violation, and upon the owner's failure to cure such violation within 10 days after receipt of such notice, or, operative word or, after 3 violations have occurred, regardless if the violations are cured, the city shall have the following rights. And the first one is to schedule a hearing to rezone the parcel in its prior RG 50 OTO zoning. At such hearing, rezone the parcel back to RG 50 OTO zoning. So for me, the awkward part is we have an agreement and virtually everybody expects the city to honor their agreements and to keep them. In order for us to do that, when I looked at the code violations, the listings since September of 2012, I counted 8 complaints and 8 violations. Now, Mr. Albert just said that one of them was found to be ungrounded. That still leaves 7 that may be founded, and it would lead us to more than twice the number that is allowed that every party as a signer has agreed to. So I don't see that the city has any choice to assess whether those are actually founded violations. And if there are indeed 3 or more that are founded, then I believe that the administration needs to take the action that's called for in item A that I just read. And after we take the vote, if this does not pass, and I will be voting against it, because as I read this, that's our only and primary choice, then I will be asking the administration to do some research into those 8 listed code violations and to determine how many are actually violations for sure that would count, and then to take whatever action is appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, I apologize but we have not closed the public hearing. So is there anybody from the public that would like to speak anymore regarding this? Mr. Shannon.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any legitimate violations. So I'm shocked to hear that the city stuck 8 in their books, but not surprised. But yeah, the only one I'm aware of is in the last 30 days, and I addressed it in an email to all the council, that code enforcement came out attacking my trailers parked along the east side of the property, saying that they're in violation. But those trailers have been there the whole 8-10 years. And so, yeah, that was just a new attack. This building was built as an office building. It should have always been zoned as an office building. And blackmailing me for my zoning is just ridiculous. But you guys do what you need to do.
Mayor, I would just like to comment. I do not believe that our code enforcement attacks people. They are professionals. They live up to the code that they have taken. It is a disservice to them and to our entire city for Mr. Shannon to keep attacking people with his verbal attacks. They are professionals. They have been called because of a complaint by a citizen. They have not initiated these actions. And when a citizen calls, they have a responsibility to carry out their sworn duty. They have done that. They have done it professionally. They have attacked no one. Thank you.
Bree?
If you could go ahead and close the public hearing, Mayor, and then Mr. Shannon will remove himself from the room, and we will notify him when it's time to come back in.
Okay.
I have a question for Mr. Shannon. Can I ask that now?
I don't see an issue with that.
Okay, so my question is, Mr. Shannon, you have this property and you use these 3 spaces for storing of trailers that are coming in and out. Is that correct?
No, since the agreement was signed, these 3 parking spaces have remained open. Occasionally, a customer may overnight drop a truck there, but we always move it in the morning. But no, these three parking spaces have remained unused per the agreement. And the U-Haul trucks are parked elsewhere on the lot. I actually have 3 lots together there, and I have a combination of 31 parking spaces.
So in having this request on, you're wanting to be able to park there? Is that what I'm understanding? Is that what the request is?
Yes, ma'am. I need to be able to park there. Those are my 3 largest parking spots, and I need to bring in extra 26-foot trucks.
Okay. Do you, if we can't approve this, do you have another location that you could park those larger vehicles at?
I would have to move the reservations to another dealer to have them serviced elsewhere.
Okay, is there anybody else in the public that would like to speak before I close the public hearing?
We have no other comments, Mayor.
No other comments from our other social outlets? Don't see anybody on GoToMeeting, so I will close the public hearing. And ask the council for any additional comments, questions.
Mayor, this is Tammy Palm, Planning Manager. Just for clarification, as far as the number of parking spots in question, I'm currently looking at the GIS aerial. I'm counting at least 5 spots, if not 6, that would be restricted in regards to the current agreement.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Stinson.
I've already asked this question of Bree. I just want to put it out there so everybody can hear it in case they didn't. He can actually park personal vehicles in those 3 spots though, correct? As far as like his car, any employees' cars can actually use those 3 spots?
Yes, that's my understanding of the agreement. It only restricts the parking of the U-Haul trucks in those spots.
Okay, thank you.
Any further comments? Councilman Preister?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to find some resolution for Mr. Shannon. We're not here to harass or do things that he believes the city does to a business. We want to work with businesses. But this, we must remember, is a residential neighborhood. We're bringing trucks in. These trucks are coming any time of the day or night. They're dropping the trucks off. They're dropping trailers off. They're unhooking things. They're out there making noise at it anytime they decide to bring these vehicles back. Lights are shining into windows. It was not appropriate, and I wish now I hadn't voted to support it when we did, because it has not been good in a residential neighborhood. This is something that should really be in a business or an industrial area. So that's what the zoning is all about. And to allow that to continue, or in this case, to even expand and bring in more trailers that can be operated at any hour of the day or night, even though the business only operates from 8 to 5. In testimony that I read in the transcripts that I was provided, it stated by Mr. Shannon's attorney that the vehicles are dropped off at whatever time the customer decides to drop them off. So the issue is really where they're located. We want the business to go on. We want it to be in a business area. But if you look at this map, you'll see those vehicles are parked. Fortunately, Mr. Shannon has been sensitive, and they're, I believe, all backed in against the one neighbor. And there is a barrier fence there to the east where they're parked. But it's still a residential area. It's still not a good idea to have this much encroachment. A business is what it was originally proposed to be. A tax business where people would drop information off and then leave. I'm hoping we can find another location where the trucks can be located, dropped off, they can be operated through the business still, but I don't know the mechanics of that. I just see that we tried something for the last 8 years, and we have had violations that have been reported that I failed to seek until this just came up, and I did some research. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Cook.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to real quickly say I agree with what Councilmember Pricer has been saying. I don't think this is a good match for a business down there. It's unfortunate, in my opinion, that is there. I will not support this amendment at this time. So I just wanted to I appreciate everything Don said. I think he wrapped it up real good as far as what probably happened at the Planning Commission and at the City Council back in September 2012. I've had many of the same concerns. I've talked to a few council members and expressed those concerns. I just don't think in a neighborhood business, this is the type of business we need, and I'm not willing to amend the agreement as requested. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Elbert, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to clear up the record a little bit. Don had made reference to the 8, and I just wanted to go through this just real briefly so you understand. So the two violations that were confirmed legitimate violations that speak to the agreement dealt with parking on the north side of the building. And those are two legitimate complaints that ultimately were corrected, but that accounts for 2. The other items are all, as I looked at this report, specific to long and continuous parking on the street, which I don't believe is addressed in the agreement in any capacity, but it still it is a violation by ordinance to have vehicles parked out on the street long and continuously. And so that's what those other complaints are, just so we're clear. And then I have to say for the record, I do find it incredibly inappropriate and unfortunate that code enforcement was attacked with those comments. They're good people, they're doing their job, and they don't deserve that.
Thank you for that. I agree. Any other comments or questions? So we have a motion on the floor to approve 16B. Motion was made by Stenson, seconded by Preister. So if there's no other comments, we will, Susan, would you take the vote on that? This is to approve.
I just have one question. This is strictly to allow him these 3 spaces till December, correct? Doesn't change the zoning?
Bree?
That's correct. The original zoning agreement that was entered into in 2012 would stand regardless. It would just be the amendment to allow the parking on those additional parking spots through December. So if you vote yes, then you're approving the amendment. If you vote no, then you are not approving the amendment, and the agreement will stand as originally written in 2012.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? So the motion is to approve. A vote yes approves it. Susan, would you take that vote, please?
Mr. Stenson,
Yes.
Mr. Cook,
No.
Mr. Shannon, abstain, Mr. Preister,
No.
Mr. Burns,
No.
Ms. Welch.
No.
So we have 1 yes vote, 4 no votes, 1 abstention. Motion fails.
All right, thank you.
And then hold on just 1 second. Tawny is going to let Mr. Shannon back in to appear for the meeting. So wait till he turns his camera on.
Okay, looks like we're all back. All right, item number 17, administration reports. Those are being revised. The 17A, we do have an update on COVID-19, and Mr. Elbert, do you want to take that?
Yeah, just briefly, since we last spoke, we continue to have our meetings with the county and the other cities every morning to include Papillion, La Vista, Gretna, Springfield, the county. Offutt is there usually, Plattsmouth. The health department kind of runs the initial part of the meeting with giving us updates on numbers and different things that are coming from the state. It's usually a rep from Don Bacon's office there as well, a handful of other people too. So we're in constant communication with them as we work through this. And then we meet Monday, Wednesday, Friday as a staff in a very similar type setting as what we're doing council tonight. Since we last spoke, probably the biggest updates, you may have noticed that the library is back up and running with a curbside kind of pickup thing they're doing, and they're very busy. In the first part of that, they had over 1,000 holds on books and stuff. So people are looking for stuff to do, and the library is helping with that some. Baseball and softball has been given the go-ahead by the governor starting in June. And so with our Parks Department and Public Works, we're starting to make arrangements to see what that looks like with those guidelines and restrictions. We got a travel policy for employees that we put in place. We're still monitoring our PPE, and worked on a daycare item too for our employees that is kind of tabled at the moment, but ready to go if we need to do something with that. So those are the major updates from last time that we spoke. We're hopeful that we get some guidance on the new directive health measures that will be coming at the end of the month. And I just would state that with the governor relaxing things a little bit with baseball and then tipping his hand a little bit today, that we would no longer be able to hold public meetings after July in the way that we're doing it now. That leads me to believe that this is going to get opened up more quickly than not. But we'll see. Anything could change. Mr. Motor's comments earlier about this being a moving target and things changing quickly has kind of been the way this has gone. But looking into the future, that's kind of what we're looking at. And I'd entertain any questions anybody might have specific to what we're doing about COVID.
Any questions for Mark? I would just add a little bit, it's kind of tied to COVID a little bit, but I know we've had some call-ins regarding grasses and right-of-ways not being mowed on the new annexed areas. Just like the public to keep in mind that we did have our entire Parks Department out with COVID-related issues for a short time, and we're trying to get all those areas on the list, and I'm confident that'll happen here in the next few weeks. So those little things are getting ironed out. So item 17B, update on council chambers. Jim, do you want to take that?
Got it. Okay, I think you just heard Mark mention that the governor's directive is to keep virtual meetings through the end of June. So for our intermediate plan is, of course, May, we will stay virtual. We'll probably do the first council meeting in June virtual. We'll make a decision thereafter. We'll do the following meeting on a virtual basis. So the chamber, the giant beam in the middle of the room is gone. If you're out and about, you take a look in there. That is no longer a large distraction. Drywall is complete. They'll finish painting here probably this week, and then ABI will be installed next week. So our council chambers are projected to be done by the end of next week, we hope or anticipate. So they should be back up and running. But on the backside, we'll stay on a virtual basis just for safety reasons, as well as ensuring that we've got the timeline to get our chamber back up and running. So that project has progressed extremely well, considering that a beam of that size has come out. So we're still on the second floor. We're not on the first floor, which is good. I see Mr. Preister.
Yep, it looks amazingly open. Councilman Preister.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to go back briefly to your comments about COVID and Mr. Alberts, I have had the pleasure of working with the Operations Command, and it has been going very well. We have dedicated employees that are adding additionally to their normal workload to make preparations, to take good precautions, to social distance, to tend to all of their duties, but in addition, do it frequently with masks on and with space that requires more time. So it is going to take more time. I hope that the public understands we are being responsive and we are working on all of the tasks, but they all require a different way of operating, and we ask them to be patient. We also asked that they please listen to what the governor has advised, and if they go out in public, to do so by observing all the rules of social distancing, to wear a mask to protect themselves and to protect the public, to keep the 6-foot space between them or more, and to be polite, we expect, and we see that they are doing it, but to observe all of the rules and the guidelines that the governor asks in his meetings. And virtually every day he is broadcast, I believe it's WOW TV at 2 p.m. and speaks directly to the public. So those guidelines are what Bellevue is following for releasing information, along with the health departments from the state that the governor oversees. So we are doing an exceptional job, as are all of our partners and all of our staff and all of our city leadership team under the leadership of Mark Elbert. And I have had the honor of watching that system be creative and work functionally very well. So I thank all of them. And I encourage the public to please continue doing what you're doing and maintain so we do flatten the curve and we can get out of this sooner. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for that. And Bree, question. I just noticed that Mr. Wickham and Severson are on. I might have missed them earlier, but I know we had a budget item at 13A. Is there a way to bring that back if they want to say something?
Not really at this time, because it was skipped over, but we do have second reading the first meeting in June. So okay. They can probably address it at that time. I apologize.
Right. Sorry, I missed. Yep. Sorry, I missed you guys. All right, that covers the agenda. So I will take a motion to it. Well, does anybody else has any comments?
Mayor, before you close out, I want to pigtail on the back of what Councilman Preister said, is that the last 60 days have been extraordinary times in our city. I have to tell you that we've got a great team of employees here that have navigated through this professionally and diligently. And I think it goes unnoticed sometimes that government employees, city employees aren't recognized for the work they do, from our leadership all the way down to our staff. We've got a lot of people that have rode through this tough time with us, done their job and done it well. And in some cases, you can measure this against other employers or other cities, and this crew truly stands above the rest to be the best here. And it's my personal thanks and gratitude for everybody, not only on this call, but all of our employees in the city have really worked their tails off and have gone through this through a very challenging time and a very unknown time for them. So got to give them props for that.
I totally agree with that, and a lot of that comes from you as well, Mr. Risto. I think people like working for you, and you're doing a great job keeping the city going as well. So, any other comments?
Locusts are next, right? I'm just kidding.
No. Councilman Preister, do you have something?
Mayor, if there are no other questions, I was going to make the motion to adjourn. I've talked enough.
All right.
I'll second.
Motion to adjourn by Preister, seconded by Shannon. Please vote. Susan, you want to take that vote, or?
Sorry, I had my mic off. Mr. Stinson,
Yes.
Mr. Cook,
Yes.
Mr. Shannon,
Yes.
Mr. Preister,
Yes.
Mr. Burns,
Yes.
and Ms. Welch.
Yes.
All voting yes, motion carried.
All right, thank you all. See you next time.